Hi, I'm Paul Lipson, and I'm the former principal of Roosevelt Elementary School. In fact, this is December the 22nd, I believe, 2005, and this is my first year of retirement, so this is an exciting time. The reason we're here tonight is to give you a little brief history of a project that's been going on for the past 3 years that culminated actually with Michigan Week and a breakfast in May of this past year. And this project is called the Roosevelt Remembers Wall. And it's a tremendous project. As I said, it took 3 years to do, and there were some very committed people to do this project. What we did is compile the complete history of Roosevelt Elementary School, which is really very centered into the history of Keego Harbor. If we could take a look at some of the plaques here on the wall. The first one has to do with the commemorative plaque from the Michigan Breakfast Week. And this is about Roosevelt School being the community school. And the committee members who are responsible for this project, they are Buzz Brown, Ann Crawford, Marilyn Truder, Donna Van Elstein, Mary Ann Lesak, and myself. Ray Pace is also a member of this, and 3 of those committee members are also part of the Roosevelt alumni. And we have tried to collect all the graduating classes from the very first graduating class to the very last high school graduating class of Roosevelt School. Roosevelt School encompassed all the grades from kindergarten through 12th grade along its history. And right now it is a preschool through 5th grade with many additions to the school and many renovations. How did these things all get to be? Well, when I first got here in 1993-94, we were going through some construction. And as I was walking through the building, trying to look at different spaces in the building and trying to get familiar with it, I saw that there were some old relics, all paraphernalia that were in different rooms in the building. And these were historical documents. And knowing what would happen during construction, I was really afraid that things would get lost or thrown away. So I took all of them and put them in one place so that we would know where they were, and had the idea that if people were interested, maybe we could make a display at some time. And as the years went by and we did more construction, I even found even more pieces, and then it became kind of a community effort where people heard that we were collecting different things from the history of the school, and they came and gave us different things. And we have now a whole showcase full of items, and we have more in storage that we are going to rotate very soon. And so this is a living project. I also want to let you know that this is a very student-centered project, and the reason for that is that we wanted to teach our students about social studies. Social studies is becoming more and more important to elementary, middle, and high school students, and it's one of the most difficult content areas to teach and for students to learn. And one of the reasons for that is just developmental. We don't really relate well to things before we can remember them. Things that we've experienced, we remember the most. Things that we don't experience directly, we have less of an attachment to it. For instance, it's interesting to me as a person who was born in 1946 and lived through some very interesting historical periods like the Vietnam War or the coming down of the Berlin Wall and things like that. Students in elementary, middle, and high school today have absolutely no idea what I'm talking about in terms of relating to seeing that on TV and going through that process. So to them, especially in elementary school, the Vietnam War has as much attraction to them or as much association to them as the Civil War. They're both the same thing as far as kids who are in elementary school today. So in any respect, what we did is we tried to connect the history of Roosevelt School to their lives. And as we took students through our presentation here, we actually saw kids pointing to pictures on the wall and saying, "That's my grandma, that's my grandfather, that's my father's brother, my uncle." And so they actually saw relatives of their own families up on display, and now all of a sudden 1930, 1935, 1925, it means a little bit more to them because they have an association to it. So the purpose of this was to gather historical documents, historical artifacts, and to have some associative properties with the kids who are in school today so that they can learn more about history. Well, let's take a look at some of the classes and the graduating pictures on our wall. As you can see, the first graduating class was in 1925, and there were 5 students who graduated in that class, and that's a 10th grade class. At this time, Roosevelt only went up to the 10th grade. The 6th person in that photo is actually the class sponsor. That picture was actually in the Detroit News when the Detroit News came out and did a story on this project a couple of years ago, and that was on the front page of the Detroit News. The first graduating class was actually in 1929. In 1929, we had the first 12th grade graduating class. And as I said, there's always a controversy. You talk to the locals in Keego Harbor, and depending upon what graduating class their family was in, they'll say, I was in the first one, which was 1925, or I was in the first one, which was 1929, and they're both correct.
If you graduated in the 10th grade and wanted to get a 12th grade education, what would you have to do?
Well, that's interesting. We actually found, Buzz Brown and I went over to the West Bloomfield board office, and bless her heart, Mary Wright, the secretary to the superintendent at that time, took us into what we call the dungeons of the board office. And way down in the basement, we found old board books, and we got the minutes from those books, and we found out that if students wanted to get a 12th grade education, they actually had to ask the Pontiac School Board for admission into the Pontiac system to go there to 11th and 12th grade and graduate from Pontiac. And in all the cases that we know of, that was granted until Roosevelt went up to the 12th grade. But they had to petition the school board in order to graduate with a high school graduation certificate from 12th grade. Okay, so we have 1930, and we have 1931, and we have almost all the graduating pictures up through 1955. And as you can see, these are all original. We had the frames redone. They are the original frames. We just had them resurfaced and reglassed and all of that. And so this is permanently set up here, and this is for the viewing pleasure of anyone who would be interested in the history of our school. So let's take a look here at the kiosk, and this is a very important instructional tool. As I talked about before, this project is to help not only adults but kids with a history of events that have happened through the decades, and especially the events at Roosevelt School. When people found out, as I said before, when people found out we were doing this project, they asked what they could do to help, and they would start bringing in pictures that they had in old books or just in magazines to keep it flat, and said, can you use this and can you use that? And one night, a couple of years ago, we held what was called the Roosevelt Remembers Night, and we took care of this in our new multi-purpose room, which was just built, and we set up scanners, and we had digital cameras, and just mobs of people came in with all of their pictures and all of their remembrance. We have report cards. We have documents showing when the nurse came in and they took height, weight, and different kinds of physical information. We have the football teams, basketball teams. We have the actual first school in Keego Harbor, the Keego Harbor School, which was the very first school that was built in 1914. There was a school before that, I understand, that was in somebody's house where the kids just came to school, and that was the school before. It was at the turn of the century. But the real school that was called a school was the Keego Harbor School. And one of the wonderful things that I remember when we had our Michigan Week and the dedication of this wall, we had graduates come here to that breakfast, and they were pointing to their graduate pictures, and Ann Crawford, being one of them, was showing what she looked like when she was a high school graduate, and actually standing here pointing to her high school graduation. We took a picture of that, and that's on our kiosk.
There she is, right here. Right
You
there.
can see Ann Crawford in 1938.
She's
And-
still doing well today.
Yeah, Anna's doing great, and she's a fellow member of the Keego Harbor Optimist Club, which is a very strong local organization.
And the Historical Society.
And the
right?
Historical Society, that's right. So as we go along and take a look at some pictures, let me tell you a little bit more about the history of the school. In 1939, for instance, Roosevelt High School won the boys Class C state. Oh, they were the runner-ups in the state basketball tournament. For instance, in 1949, the school district number 5 of West Bloomfield consolidates with the districts of Greene, Posner, Scotch, and Keego Harbor to form the school district number 5 of West Bloomfield and Sylvan Lake Village. This becomes very interesting to me. In 1955, West Bloomfield High School was built. And that is actually where Abbott is right now. So when Abbott was first built, Abbott was the high school, and that was in 1955. There's a very interesting story about that, because I understand that, and these are the stories that have been told to me, that that school was finished about this time of the year, just about Christmas time. And during the break was the changeover from Roosevelt to Abbott. And so the students were asked to go to Abbott and to graduate from Abbott once they were there. When that class of 55 went over there, and it was now June, they didn't want to graduate from Abbott or West Bloomfield High School, which was Abbott. They wanted to go graduate from Roosevelt. And my understanding is that the administration at that time said no, that your high school now is West Bloomfield High School, and that's where the graduation ceremony was. And there was quite a controversy over that, and I understand there was some boycotting and that kind of a thing. And that is a very sore point with some of the graduates today, saying that they wanted to graduate from their school, which was Roosevelt. So in 1955, Abbott was built. It became West Bloomfield High School, and of course there's traditions that started there. Right now, Abbott is a middle school. Then some other kinds of dates. In 1965, I believe, yes, 1965, Orchard Lake Middle School was built. And so that became the middle school of the district. So all the students who were in 6th and 7th grades at Roosevelt then went to Orchard Lake Middle School. So you can imagine the controversy of that, going all the way across town to go to another school. So there was quite a conversation about that. So we have Roosevelt being a kindergarten, well, being a school that went up to the 12th grade in 1929. Then it was a middle school and an elementary school, and then it became just an elementary school. And from 65 on, it was an elementary school where it was kindergarten through, I believe, 5th grade. And it remained that way until Head Start came to Roosevelt as a preschool. Then preschool came in with Head Start, and it is what it is today, preschool through 5th grade. We have all other kinds of programs here at Roosevelt too. There's the district magnet program for the academically talented students. They come from all over the district, including Roosevelt. We have the STEPS program, which is a program for severely emotionally impaired students, which is an extremely successful county program. As I said, a wonderful Head Start program and a wonderful preschool program. So that's a little bit about the history of Roosevelt School. You know, one of the wonderful things about this project is the community support. And when people started bringing in all the items that they've had in their basement or their treasured items that they've kept on mantles, we had to figure out a way to display it. And we had fundraisers and we had donations, and the Alumni Association kicked in, the school district kicked in. The showcases here are done with our furniture assessment for the school, for the bond, so we were able to purchase these showcases. And we were able to put in all the artifacts, get them redone, trophies, wonderful sporting trophies, remounted, and it was just a wonderful example of the community effort of contributing to a project. So we have some real treasures here, and we have others as well that are in boxes and waiting to be displayed on our next rotation. So this is a living, breathing presentation that will be going on for years and years to come. We're very excited about it. It is a dream come true that the history of Roosevelt School, which is now the oldest functioning school in Oakland County, possibly in Michigan, that was built in 1920, is doing very well in the year 2005 and is as strong today academically as it was in 1920. And we are keeping the tradition of Roosevelt alive for generations to come.
Okay. I have one question. Who's the principal now?
The principal of Roosevelt now is a wonderful man by the name of Dr. Stephen Palmer. Steve comes from Harbor Springs. He has a wealth of experience. Some people like to refer to Steve as one of my brothers because we look somewhat alike. And I couldn't be happier that he's here. He's keeping up the tradition of Roosevelt School. The community loves him, the kids love him, the staff loves him, and so the school is in very good hands, and I couldn't be happier. So if your family moved into Keego Harbor and you had children and they were coming to school, when they're elementary students, they would be coming to Roosevelt School. And then in the 6th grade, they would go to either Abbott Middle School or Orchard Lake Middle School. And again, the history of those schools are entrenched into the history of Keego Harbor. Abbott Middle School was named after Warren Abbott. And for instance, in 1941, Mr. Abbott was the superintendent of schools. And so Abbott Middle School is named after him. It wasn't always called Abbott Middle School, remember, it was called West Bloomfield High School when it was first built. That was the first high school, is where Abbott is now. And to restate it again, Orchard Lake Middle School was our district's first middle school. So that's kind of the history of the movement. So as kids come in, they would go to Roosevelt, either Abbott or Orchard Lake Middle School now, and then they would go to one of the finest high schools in Oakland County in the state of Michigan, which is West Bloomfield High School, which has a tremendous reputation and is a wonderful high school.
Okay. One of the trivia questions on my book there was,
Okay.
there with that Ivanhoe Huntley's building, there was a field, a soccer field. And
The famous soccer field.
you seem to know the history of that better, just as well as anybody does know it. How about telling us about that?
Well, I actually had a meal with some people who actually built that soccer field. And my understanding is that it could have been a stables at one time, and then they actually went out and graded the area and made it a field, and it was the football field. Roosevelt played on that field. Abbott High School, when it was a high school, they played on that field. So that was that land belonged to the city of Keego Harbor and specifically used for sporting events. There's a lot of controversy about that field because the city at that time actually gave that land over to the school district, and they sold that to the school district for, my understanding is, $1. And the school district agreed to maintain that and use that for the school facilities. And as that land became more expensive and became very well-desired property, there was a lot of talk between the school district and the city in terms of could we share into the finances of the school, of the land, or share in that. And now what it is a subdivision which benefits both the city and the school district, and now homes are being built on there. Homes in which students will be living and students will be coming to the school. Homes in which taxes are being paid and the taxes go to the city. So both parties have really benefited from the sale of that land.